Since awareness involves more than merely observing your surroundings, it is the starting point of everything in the place that most people are scared to go. It's observing your inner workings, and many people stay away from that location. It's simpler to point fingers, blame the outside world, and claim that they caused me to feel this way. The excuses, however, begin to fall apart as soon as you become conscious. Consider this. Mind tricks are only effective in the dark. They take advantage of confusion. They thrive on feelings. When you don't challenge them, they get more powerful. It's like turning on a light in a room full of illusions. When you bring awareness to the issue, what seems strong suddenly appears weak. What was once overwhelming starts to become predictable. When you first become aware of things you had previously overlooked, it might be unsettling. You become aware of the words that set you off. You notice how quickly the tone, approbation, or rejection of another person may change your emotions, and it can hurt to realize that. You start to realize that not all of your emotions are genuinely your own. Some were planted by people who understood precisely which buttons to press, influenced by prior experiences. You are conditioned, not weak. This is the pivotal moment, though. You are not ensnared in that reality by awareness. It releases you from it. You can't unsee the pattern once you've noticed it. The trigger loses its surprise once you identify it. You cease acting like a puppet once you grasp the game. Imagine becoming the target of negativity. You immediately absorb it prior to awareness. When it strikes, you experience rage, annoyance, and possibly even self-doubt. They take control of your mental state as soon as you react without thinking. However, awareness causes something distinct to occur. Between what occurs and your reaction, there is a brief but impactful delay. You ask yourself, why am I feeling this at that pause? Does this response make me feel better or worse? Is this noise or is it really true? You have power during that break because you are no longer under control. You're making a decision. Being aware helps you distinguish between interpretations and facts. Until your mind lends them significance, someone's words are merely, and the majority of the time, your interpretation is influenced by past traumas, anxieties, and insecurities. However, once you realize it, you cease accepting every concept that comes to mind without question. You begin to test them. You're not good enough, says the voice in your head. From where did it originate? Who placed it there? More significantly, why do you continue to listen to it? Your mind becomes a control room instead of a battleground when you are aware. Rather than combating every unpleasant idea, you begin to notice them. As you watch them come and go like passing clouds, you come to a profound realization. Your thoughts are not who you are the one who observes them. And when you realize that, everything changes because negativity is no longer powerful. It stops being a directive and turns into just another indication. It can knock on your door, but it is not allowed to enter and take control. Additionally, awareness reveals other people's intents. Someone is banking on your response when they attempt to control you. They want you to be defensive, furious, or insecure. They gain control from that response, but when you become conscious, you begin to see behind their words. You take note of their timing, tone, and patterns. You come to the conclusion that their actions reveal more about them than about you. Additionally, you reply strategically rather than emotionally. Or perhaps you don't react at all. When used deliberately, silence is one of the most effective reactions since it conveys that you're not playing their game. Being aware also compels you to accept responsibility, which is where true power is found. You're accountable for how you interpret what other people do, not for what they do. Instead of stating, "They made me feel this way," consider saying, "This is how I responded, and I can change that." That change is crucial because your tranquility is constantly in jeopardy if other people dictate how you feel. However, if you manage your reaction, your tranquility becomes untouchable. Naturally, awareness does not imply a sudden lack of emotion. You will continue to be angry. You will continue to experience agony. There will still be times where you doubt yourself. The distinction is that you are no longer under the influence of those emotions. You don't become them, you just feel them. You accept them without allowing them to dictate how you behave. That's mastery. This is the portion that most people don't discuss. Being aware is a skill. You don't just turn it on overnight. It's something you develop over time. You're honing that ability each time you choose comprehension over impulse, pause rather than react, or that your logic's greatest state. You will first forget. You'll be drawn back into your old routines. Before you consider, you'll act. Even if you won't feel like anything has changed, awareness is still operating because you are now aware of the reaction. You think. You gain knowledge. You make adjustments. And gradually, that awareness begins to manifest earlier and earlier until eventually it appears prior to the actual reaction. You'll know he changed it, that's that bad bug, because you are now conscious in the moment rather than just after the events. And that's where the power is. Therefore, you don't panic when they try to trick you, when negativity tries to infiltrate, or when your own thoughts try to turn against you. You watch, you get it. After that, you make a decision, since consciousness involves more than just perceiving reality. It all comes down to what you decide to do with it. And no game can control you once you really get that. You cannot be owned by negativity, because you become hazardous in an unpredictable way as soon as you can see well. It's because you're no longer blind, not because you fight harder. You have a voice in your head that never stops talking. When you wake up, it speaks. Throughout the day, it follows you. At night, when all is silent, it whispers. The majority believe that voice to be their own. However, since that voice can be sculpted, programmed, and manipulated, that is the first illusions. And someone else will take charge of it if you don't. Consider its origins. Every critique you were subjected to as a child, every time you were doubted, every setback that caused damage, they didn't simply vanish, they joined that voice. It may not even be your conviction when it says, "You can't do this." It could be an echo, a remnant of someone who never saw your potential. Nevertheless, you take it at face value. The game is played in this manner, by influencing the voice that determines your actions rather than directly commanding your actions. Because you'll pause if they can make you doubt yourself. You'll play small if they can make you feel insignificant. You won't even attempt to improve if they can make you feel inadequate. The most perilous aspect is that it seems natural. It seems to be a natural part of who you are. However, it isn't. It's conditioning, and you beginning control as soon as you recognize it. Silencing your inner voice is not the same as controlling it. That is not feasible. There will always be a voice. Changing your relationship with it is where the true power lies. You begin to doubt it rather than mindlessly following it. You wonder, based on what, when it says you're going to fail? You reply, who, when it says you're going to fail? You reply, who, when it says you're not good enough? When it says you're not good enough? When it says don't try, you'll embarrass yourself. You either challenge it or you begin to view every thought as a suggestion rather than an order. You're no longer being pulled by your ideas, which is a small but profound difference. You're assessing them. Think of your mind as a courthouse. There are arguments coming from your inner voice all the time. Some make sense. Some people have strong emotions. Some are totally warped. You used to take every argument at face value. You're now the judge. You pay attention, but that you don't always concretely challenge presumptions. You turn away from things that don't benefit you, and gradually that voice starts to shift, since this is the reality that most people choose to ignore. Your response to the inner voice determines how it changes. It gets worse if you allow it to bully you. It gets louder if you ignore it entirely. However, if you confront it with consciousness and purpose, it begins to change. Clears throat. It begins to line it up with your selected direction. It will revert to its previous patterns. The same negative lines will be repeated. Because that's what it knows. It will attempt to elicit familiar emotional responses from you. However, you maintain your consistency. You fix it. you reroute it. Intentional thoughts take the place of destructive ones, not meaningless affirmations or phony optimism, but thoughtful, grounded thinking. You say, "I'm learning," rather than "I'm a failure." You say, "I'll figure it out," rather than "I can't handle this." You say, "This is temporary." These are more than just words. Instead of saying that everything is going wrong, they are guidelines. Additionally, the directions you repeat the most are followed by your mind. The voice can be reprogrammed in this way, reprogrammed in this way, reprogrammed in this way. Reprediction and control, not coercion. And eventually, a significant paid replace that you are now being pushed forward by the voice that previously held you back. The same mind that produced uncertainty also begins to provide clarity. The voice that used to whisper dread now speaks confidently. However, it doesn't end there. Knowing when to ignore your inner voice is another aspect of controlling it. You shouldn't focus on every thought. Certain thoughts are nothing more than noise, sporadic anxieties, recollections of the past, and worst-case scenarios envisioned. You will run out of energy if you pursue them all. You therefore learn to let them go. You watch them without responding. You recognize them, but you don't get attached to them. It's similar to refusing to let the wind carry you away while you're in the thick of a hurricane. Everything else moves, but you stay motionless. Control is that. Additionally, you don't allow the voice to exaggerate your unpleasant emotions when they do arise. You see what the voice is trying to say, so you don't let a single negative experience turn into "my whole life is a mess." You don't let a single error turn into "I'm worthless." You don't let transient suffering turn into a permanent identity. It's making an incorrect attempt to safeguard you by generalizing and exaggerating, and you bring it back to reality rather than succumbing to it. You maintain its groundedness. Remind yourself to focus on the actual things rather than simply the intense ones. That's how you deal with bad emotions, not by getting rid of them, but by not allowing your inner voice to mislead you. Because although emotions come and go, your mind's narrative about them is what sustains them. You can alter the experience by altering the narrative. This is the point at which everything comes together. Anyone attempting to manipulate you will find you unpredictable when you have complete control over your inner voice. They anticipate an emotional response from you, but you don't. They anticipate your self-doubt, but you question the doubt itself. They anticipate that you will crumble under duress, yet you maintain composure, because you already have the internal control they were attempting to obtain from the outside. Praise is no longer a factor in your confidence. Your tranquility is independent of the situation. Fear is not a factor in your selections. They originate from a place of control, where your ideas work to your advantage rather than against you. The voice in your head is no longer your enemy once you get there. It turns into a disciplined, acute, and focused ally. It still speaks, but now it does so with intention, to lead you, not to restrict you, to make you stronger rather than weaker. The world is free to try anything. However, there is nothing left for them to control after you have mastered your inner voice. There is a reputation for pain, because pain seemed like weakness, like something that slows you down, distracts you, and makes you vulnerable. People avoid it, hide from it, numb it, and act as though it doesn't exist. However, that is only true if you don't look into it. Pain that is unquestioned turns into anguish. Ignored suffering turns into anguished. What you do with it makes a difference. Every unpleasant experience has information, not simply feelings. It lets you know where something was important. It illustrates the points where reality and expectations clashed. It highlights the discrepancies between your expectations and reality. Most individuals give up on the emotion. They either walk away after saying that hurt, or worse, they carry it with them like a burden. However, if you dig a little more, why did this hurt? You wonder, looking past the obvious. Was it a rejection? Was it treachery? Was it a failure? You then delve even farther. which belief was affected by that pain, because suffering isn't limited to what transpired. What matters is what it meant to you. The same circumstance can happen to two persons. When one breaks, the other adjusts. The interpretation is what makes a difference, not the event itself. That's where strategy starts. You begin to treat pain like data cold, transparent, and helpful instead of as a random assault. Suppose someone treats you disrespectfully. Anger, irritation, and possibly even self-doubt are the initial emotional reactions. However, you lose control if you remain there. Rather, you take a step back and do some analysis. What specifically set off this reaction? Was it what they said, or what they implied? Did it push your limit? You are now researching pain rather than only experiencing it, and you find anything useful in that study. Perhaps you are aware that your limits are unclear. Perhaps you see that you're looking for approval when you shouldn't. Perhaps you realize that their actions are a reflection of their own shortcomings rather than your value. That insight is a tactic, because you won't be shocked the next time it occurs. You're ready. Pain turns into a lesson you've already acquired. Avoid falling into the same trap twice. Failure is no different. Failure is painful not only because of the result, but also because of what it makes you think. You're not competent, you're not prepared, you are insufficient. However, those are not facts, they are interpretations. You eliminate those interpretations and concentrate on truth when you use pain as a technique. What went wrong? What was absent? What could be made better? You become accurate. Pain is no longer emotional upheaval when you state this approach didn't work because of this, and this, rather than I failed. Feedback is structured. Feedback is also useful. Most folks fall behind at this point. They experience pain, but they don't deal with it. Thus, it is repeated. The outcome is the same under different circumstances. The same pattern, different persons. Thus, the lesson was never taken out. However, repetition becomes refinement when you begin to use suffering strategically. You get sharper with every error. Every setback modifies your course. You learn where to grow and where to guard from each one. Just asking, what is this teaching me, instead of why is this happening to me, makes all the difference. Since nothing is wasted anymore. Not the disappointment, not the rejection, not the treachery. Everything turns into raw material that you can mold into something more powerful. This is the part that most folks miss. It doesn't make you frigid to turn suffering into strategy. It clarifies you. You continue to feel. You still experience the full weight of what happens, but you make use of it rather than drowning in it. You give yourself permission to experience the pain completely without allowing it to dictate how you behave. That's self-control, because when you're injured, it's easy to react. Lashing out, shutting down, or giving up is simple. However, strategy calls for perseverance. To separate the emotion from the lesson, you must endure the discomfort long enough to comprehend it. Clears throat. The pain begins to lessen once you do that. It's already been utilized, not because it didn't matter. It has already undergone change. Consider it this way. Pain is unadulterated energy. It burns you if you don't control it. It gives you energy if you channeled it. It burns you. Your resilience might be strengthened by the same suffering that could undermine your self-esteem. The same rejection that would cause you to give up might motivate you to get better. The same disappointment that could make you resentful might also sharpen you. It all depends on how you use it. Additionally, you undergo internal changes over time. You cease being afraid of suffering because you understand it, not because you like it. You are aware that there is always something to gain from whatever occurs, something to discover, something to change, something to fortify. That self-assurance is distinct. It is not predicated on things going smoothly. It is predicated on your ability to manage situations when they go wrong. That is true power, because you don't crumble now when life hits you, which it will. You do the processing, you adjust, you use the experience. And those who formerly believe that suffering would shatter you begin to notice something disturbing. They made you more difficult to defeat each time they attempted to harm you. Every obstacle turned into a setting. Every setback turned into a teaching moment. Every injury turned into wisdom. You're now making use of challenges rather than only enduring them. With each impact, you refine yourself, increasing awareness, control, and precision. That's what it means to make strategy out of suffering. Avoiding the harm is not the goal. Making sure nothing strikes you without leaving anything priceless behind is the goal, because the suffering is ultimately unavoidable. However, continuing to be broken by it is a decision. Additionally, you now know how to make diverse decisions. The majority of people are unaware of how much of their lives are governed by unseen threads rather than by force or regulations. A glance, a remiss, a moment of acceptance or rejection. And all of a sudden, their attitude changes, their self-assurance fluctuates, their choices are flexible. External control is what that is. It doesn't on its own. Permission is not required. When your internal state depends on anything external to you, it subtly takes control. When you receive praise, you feel strong. You shrink when people criticize you. You start to doubt your value if they disregard you. And because your emotions are no longer your own, you've unknowingly given up control. They are reactions brought on by other people. It's not about becoming aloof or cut off from the outside world to detach from external control. The goal is to overcome such reliance. It's about understanding that something that occurs outside of you doesn't have the right to dictate what occurs within you. It becomes awkward at this point, though. As you realize how frequently you've been looking for approval, you see how a simple good job can make your entire day better, and how its absence can make you feel insignificant. You become aware of how criticism replays itself, shapes your ideas, and causes you to doubt yourself for longer than it should. And you begin to pose a risky query. Why am I giving this so much authority? Because the answer is rarely about the moment itself. That question alters everything. It is more profound. It has to do with wanting to be noticed and accepted, and that's perfectly acceptable. However, control evaporates when those needs become dependent, because you now need validation, not simply value it. It can also be taken away by anyone who is able to offer it. The trap is that when you realize that your worth is independent of other people's opinions, you start to become detached. You are still valid even if someone misinterprets you. You are still capable even if someone has doubts about you. You are still deserving even if someone rejects you. However, your mind finds it difficult to accept that it has been conditioned to respond and to see every signal from the outside world as personal. A delayed response is considered disrespectful. A critical remark turns into a personal assault. A failure turns into a personality. Thus, you begin working in reverse. You pause rather than responding instinctively. You wonder if this is really about them or about me. Am I reacting to my perception of reality or to reality itself? Why is this so important at this moment? Because you're no longer reacting out of habit. Control returns during that interval. You choose your answer. Letting rid of the desire to manage how other people perceive you is another aspect of detachment that is among the most burdensome things that people have to deal with. Attempting to control perceptions, attempting to escape being judged, attempting to win everyone over. However, no matter how much you modify yourself, someone will still misinterpret you. There will be a disagreement. Someone is going to pass judgment. That isn't a failure. That's the truth. You cease performing for approval as soon as you acknowledge that. You begin to connect your behaviors with who you truly are instead of molding them according to how they will be seen. Freedom is that, because your behaviors are now motivated by intention rather than insecurity. You don't overthink every response when you say what has to be said. You don't base your decisions on fear of being judged, but rather on clarity. You proceed without waiting for approval, and an intriguing event occurs. Others have less power over you if you don't pursue approval. Their commendation becomes into a perk rather than a necessity. Their criticism becomes into facts rather than a judgment. Their viewpoints become into perspectives rather than the definitions. You also begin to perceive individuals differently. You come to see that everyone is acting based on their own prejudices, anxieties, and experiences. Therefore, it's not always about you when someone reacts poorly. It's their perspective, their narrative, and their inner condition. You stop taking everything so personally as soon as you realize that. This does not imply that you disregard criticism. It implies that you filter it. You pick what's helpful and discard the rest. Because you've developed something stronger inside, you don't allow one person's view to take precedence over your entire sense of self. Outcomes are also subject to detachment. External control isn't always about people, it's all about outcomes. When things don't go your way, everything falls apart because you associate success with your feelings. Detaching, however, allows you to concentrate on the procedure. You put forth your best effort without allowing the result to determine. If it succeeds, you gain knowledge. Even if it doesn't, you still get knowledge. In any case, you proceed, because your foundation isn't based on outward outcomes. That kind of thinking makes you stable and unaffected by fleeting highs or lows. Internal consistency is the foundation of it. This is the point at which dissociation becomes potent. Because manipulation depends on emotional hooks, you grow more difficult to control. Someone can control you if they know what sets you off. However, those hooks land differently once you've disengaged. You don't respond right away. You don't readily reveal your emotional state. You don't let other people tell you what to do. You watch, you comprehend, and then you make a decision. Because your activities aren't motivated by pleasure, you become unpredictable in a good way. Clarity is what motivates them, and as time goes on, this alters how you navigate the world. You get calmer because you are no longer pushed in all directions, not because life is simpler. Because you aren't wasting your energy attempting to win over everyone, you become more focused. You gain confidence because you don't need their approval, not because everyone agrees with you. That's independence, not loneliness or apathy, but true detachment, the capacity to remain in touch with the world without letting it rule you. And once you reach that point, external opinions stop shaking you. Situations stop defining you. Reactions stop controlling you. Because everything that used to pull you apart now passes through you without leaving a mark. You still see it, you still hear it, you still understand it, but you don't become it. And that's the moment you realize the control was never outside. You just had to take it back. Chaos isn't the exception. It's Hlur's throat, the rule. Life doesn't move in straight lines. It doesn't organize itself around your plans, your expectations, or your comfort. Things shift without warning. Individuals alter for no apparent reason. Situations collapse just when you thought they were stable, and most people spend their lives trying to avoid that. They chase certainty. They build routines hoping nothing breaks them. They hold on tightly to control because the unknown feels like a threat. But here's the truth they don't want to face. The more you resist chaos, the more fragile you become, because the moment something unexpected happens and you're thrown off balance. Your emotions spike, your thoughts scatter, your decisions become reactive. Not because chaos is strong, but rather because you were never taught how to survive in it. You don't have to like disorder to embrace chaos. It implies that you no longer anticipate a predictable life. It means that before you feel stable, you stop expecting things to go your way. Rather, you construct something more robust. You construct yourself, because your reaction to the environment is the only thing you can control if you can't control the environment itself. Real power is located there. Imagine two individuals in the same predicament, with everything around them collapsing. One becomes terrified, the other makes adjustments. Same chaos, different outcome, the difference glut. It's internal control. When you embrace chaos, you stop seeing it as a disruption and start clears throat, seeing it as a test. Not a test of strength alone, but a test of awareness, discipline, and adaptability. Because chaos exposes everything. It highlights your weaknesses. It magnifies your habits. It forces your true mindset to the surface. If your thoughts are scattered, chaos amplifies that. If your emotions are unstable, chaos intensifies them. If your decisions are impulsive, chaos makes them reckless. But if you train yourself, chaos becomes an advantage. Because while others are overwhelmed, you're observing. While others are reacting, you're calculating. You're getting insight when others are losing control. That's what self-mastery entails. Controlling what occurs is not the goal. It's about controlling what happens within you when everything outside is unpredictable. That starts with your thoughts. In chaotic moments, your mind will try to rush ahead. It will jump to worst-case scenarios. It will create stories that aren't even real yet. This is going to fail. Everything is falling apart. There's no way out of this. If you believe those thoughts, instantly you lose. Not because they're true, but because they shape your actions. You slow it down as a result. Clears throat. You return your attention to the here and now. What is really going on? What do I currently have control over? What comes next, not how things turn out. When you try to tackle everything at once, chaos feels overwhelming, and that grounding brings insight. However, it becomes manageable when you break it down moment by moment and choice by decision. Control is that. Then come your emotions. You will be provoked by chaos. It will push frustration, fear, anger, sometimes all at once. And if you have to what those woes, you're going to be quick. You'll say things you don't mean. You'll make decisions you regret. You'll burn energy fighting things you can't change. Mastery doesn't mean you don't feel those emotions. It implies that you keep them from taking the wheel. You acknowledge them but don't follow their instructions. You feel the pressure without collapsing under it. Even when everything around you isn't, you maintain your composure. It is uncommon to have such constancy. It's powerful because of this. Because most people seek stability and upheaval. You stand out when you achieve that solidity, not by being boisterous, but by exercising control. Instead of imposing order, move with accuracy. Letting go of perfection is another aspect of embracing chaos. Because flawless circumstances are impossible in a chaotic environment, there's always missing information. There's always uncertainty. There's always risk. So instead of waiting for every friend, you adapt as you go. You make judgments with the knowledge that they may not be ideal, but they are essential. You are able to move because of that flexibility. You generate clarity by taking action, whereas others freeze while waiting for clarity. And clears throat. Every step you take gives you more information, more feedback, more direction. That's how you turn chaos into progress. However, there is more to this. It lets you see what really counts. It shows you what you're actually capable of. Those facts can be concealed by comfort. They are exposed by chaos. And when you stop fearing that, you start valuing it. Because now every chaotic moment becomes an opportunity to sharpen yourself, to refine your thinking, to strengthen your discipline, to deepen your self-control. You don't ask, why is this happening? You ask, how can I use this? That mindset transforms everything. Because chaos is no longer your enemy. It serves as your training ground, a place where you develop the ability to stay calm under pressure, to think clearly in uncertainty, to act decisively when others hesitate. And over time, something shifts inside you. Before you feel confident, you stop expecting everything to be flawless. You no longer rely on steadiness to feel in charge. You understand that control had nothing to do with the circumstances. It was all your emotions, your actions. That's what you master. And once you do, chaos loses its intimidation. It remains unpredictable. It's still quite intense. However, it doesn't shake you as much as it once did. Because now, no matter what happens outside you, there's something inside you that stays grounded, focused, calm, ready. And that's what separates those who break from those who rise. Not the absence of chaos, but the ability to walk through yourself You eventually come to an uncomfortable realization. Situations were never the only factor. People were never the only focus. It was a game, a reaction-based game, a control game. Emotions are pulled like strings in this game, and most people are unaware that they are being played. Acceptance turns into a prize. Rejection turns into a penalty. Focus turns into a prize. Rejection turns into a penalty. Being liked is how you strive to win. By avoiding confrontation or seeking approval, you attempt to prevail. However, you never truly feel in control, no matter how much you play. Since you aren't supposed to win according to the rules, they were intended to keep you responding. The trap is that you get more and more sucked into the game as you try to win on its terms. Therefore, playing better does not equate to getting above the game. It means understanding the structure so clearly that you stop needing to play at all. That's an entirely new level. Since you are no longer seeking clearance, you are establishing your own criteria. You're not trying to avoid being rejected. It no longer has control over you. You're not responding to every action. When and whether clears throat, you answer, is up to you. That change is subtle yet impactful. It feels weird at first. You become aware of circumstances in which you used to respond right away, but now you hesitate. You identify times when you would have stood up for yourself, and now you're letting quiet do the talking. It no longer lands the same way when you see individuals attempting to antagonize you. It's not that you don't notice it, it's because it no longer draws you in. Rising above that is what it means. You're not emotionally invested in the game's results, but you are nevertheless aware of it. Clears throat. And in a manner that most people don't comprehend, it's what makes you dangerous. Because predictable responses are essential to the game. If you say something offensive, they will become enraged. They don't pay attention because they anticipate insecurity. When you put pressure on them, anticipate panic. However, the pattern breaks when you don't respond as unstable. Additionally, control vanishes when the pattern breaks. You don't have to become passive as a result. It implies that you start being deliberate. You don't react out of habit. You answer voluntarily. You offer something your whole attention if it merits it. If it doesn't, you let it go without using up all of your energy. Your approach to everything is altered by that degree of control. Because you're not attempting to win them, conversations become more transparent. Because they are not motivated by fear or approval, decisions become more acute. Because relationships aren't based on performance, they become more genuine. You begin to value things differently. Being aligned but not liked. Being honest with yourself yet not being understood by everyone. Controlling your own reactions rather than manipulating others. Freedom starts there, because you stop being impacted by the game's results as soon as you stop needing it. You like accolades, but it doesn't define who you are. You take criticism into consideration, but it doesn't shatter you. You don't chase or collapse when someone walks away. It is uncommon to have such stability, and it originates from a single source. You turned your attention inside. You concentrate on how you view yourself, rather than attempting to influence how other people perceive you. You concentrate on how you appear rather than attempting to entreat every result. You remain centered in your own direction rather than attempting to anticipate every move. You are consistent because of your personal focus. Additionally, confidence is produced by consistency, not the boisterous kind, not the kind that has to prove itself, but the silent type, the kind that doesn't shake under pressure, the kind that doesn't shake under pressure, the kind that doesn't need constant reassurance, the kind that stands firm even when everything is. You truly begin to see it more clearly than ever when you transcend the game. You pick up on conversational patterns. You observe the subtle ways in which others attempt to exert authority. The dynamics that formerly perplexed you are now clear to you. However, you watch it rather than becoming sucked into it. You engage when it's necessary and disengage when it's not. Since energy is the actual currency in this situation, that balance preserves your energy. You pay a price for each response. You are exhausted by every emotional surge. Every pointless thing diverts your attention. Thus, you start to be picky. Not everything is worth your time. Not everything is worthy of your reply. Not everything is worthy of your reply. Not everything is worthy of your effort. And power comes from that selectivity, because you're not dispersed anymore. You're guided. You move with intention. And your decision to take action has consequences, since it is not motivated by going outside the game also alters how you respond to failures. A loss used to feel personal. It seemed like a failure, like evidence that you were insufficient. You view things differently today, though. It's merely an occasion, something that occurred, not something that makes you who you are. You take what's important and move on. Nothing dramatic. Don't overreact. It has no identity tied to it. What keeps you ahead is your capacity to advance without being emotionally trapped. Because you're already adjusting, changing, and moving forward while others are reliving the moment. And the difference becomes apparent over time. You're no longer squandering energy on things that don't advance you, not because you're attempting to outdo everyone. That's the true meaning of rising beyond. It has nothing to do with dominate. It has nothing to do with dominate other tans. It has nothing to do with dominating other people. It's about letting go of the things that once controlled you, the fear of being turned down, the urge to respond, the tendency to overthink every action. You outgrow it by understanding, not by coercion. Additionally, anything loses its pull on you if you have a thorough understanding of it. In order for the game to go on around you, it is still playable. The same things can still happen in some situations. However, you are no longer a part of it in the same manner. You're functioning at a different level, one in which your activities are motivated by purpose rather than instinct, one in which your value is determined by yourself rather than by others, one in which your inner tranquility is independent of results. You do more than merely make it through the game in that area. Silently, you pass through it, totally irreversible.